Hey guys, Shad Dehart here, the creator of Dehart's Web Design, and today is February 2nd, 2022. I am really happy. I finally am to the point where I can share this video with you all. Also, I want to remind everyone that I am still very new to programming. But I have fallen in love with the process. I am very passionate about programming. I've created a few websites this year that I am very proud of. Although they are not perfect, they are my foundation that I will build from. I'm more than likely going to go back and record how I created them as well in the near future. But the project we are covering in this video is my first real application, my first real JavaScript application. And wow, let me tell you, this assignment, which is from the Odin project, section 12, revisiting rock, paper, scissors, it was surprisingly hard for me. It took a lot of work. So I've decided to start sharing my journey in hopes that these videos will not only help to solidify the information that we will be covering into my mind, but also a good way to help others. And possibly catch some bugs. And hopefully with some of your help, we can fix those bugs. So let's jump in where we left off from in the last video, which was right here in my finished product. And this is going to be part one of 2, maybe 3 videos for the revisiting rock, paper, scissors assignment. Now in part 2, well, let's get started. We start by creating a variable and naming it choices. We initialize choices, the choices variable, to query selector all. Now, the query selector all method returns a list of the elements in the document that match a specified CSS selector. In this case, it's going to be the ID of rock, the ID of paper, and the ID of scissors. Okay. This is the index HTML page, sorry. So yeah, we have the ID of rock, ID of paper, ID of scissors, and each input button. Also, we have the CSS selector, the class selector for choices in each one of those input buttons. Now that we declared our choices variable and it's initialized, we can use the for each method. To iterate through the list of elements that are returned by the query selector all method. Now this right here, the choices.forEach, is used to iterate over all the choices. The callback function is invoked for each choice. That's this one here. We use the arrow function to bind the event listener to the current choice. The event listener is invoked when the user clicks on the choice. Once the callback function is invoked, all the code inside the function is executed. And that would be all of these functions here. They will get called or executed. Okay. Now, in the last video, I used this block of code right here to create the computer's ability to, well, to create the computer's random choice. In this video, or in this app, I changed it up a little bit. So now I use the computer selection variable, and this is an array of 3 strings. The computer uses a random number to select one of the 3 strings in the array. The computer's choice is stored in the variable computer input right here, this variable. In our case, the 3 random numbers will be between 0 and 2, and that's because there are 3 elements in this array. We have 0, index 0, index 1, index 2. So we're between 0 and 2. All right, so we then create another variable, the computer input, and initialize it with the math.floor, and that method is used to round a number down to the nearest integer. And then the math.random method is used to generate a number between 0 and 1. Then you take the math.random and multiply it by 3, and that is used to generate a random number between 0 and 3. I hope that made sense. And when you get all of these other functions completed, you just need to call them inside of this event listener. Like I just said, I'm kind of repeating myself, but we'll get into that in a minute. So that is how we did that part, the for each and the add event listener with the callback function and the click. All right, let's go down. All right, now we need to write a function that will determine the winner of each round. Let's start the play around function with an if statement that will give the result of tie. So we're going to create an if statement, and the player input is equal to the computer input, and then we'll console.log out the. Okay, before we get into that, let's stop. Before we get into this any deeper, if you guys don't take anything from this video other than this variable right here, this current match, I want you to understand it, because this is very cool and it's very powerful, and it helps us to display our choices dynamically onto the browser and into the console. So const current match is initialized to a template literal that concatenates the embedded expression player input and computer input with the string literals vs right there. Now we can jump into the if statement. If the player input equals the computer's input, we'll console.log out the current match and concatenate it with the string it's a tie. Now we can go over here and I will show you. So when we click the button, we not only get the result displayed in the console or the rock, the first position here is the player's input, mine, but it's also displayed up here. And the second input is the computer's random choice. And this is our string that we concatenate to it right here. Well, up in the browser, it's this one. It's the round tie.txt. These template literals are pretty much identical. Well, they are identical for these two. Then we return. We use this return. Return is used to return a value from a function. In this case, the function returns the string tie, and it puts it into the round tie div, and that is right there. It's an empty div that we dynamically put information into. That way it shows up over here in the browser. All right, so, and it puts it in the round tie div, but is not seen because the text content takes the value of the return value and changes the value to what is inside the template literal. So this is actually what we're seeing, is what inside the template literal. And then that's the end of the if statement right there. So since you've checked for the possibility of a tie, since we checked for the possibility of a tie first, you only need to create one if-else block for the outcome. So what I'm saying is we only need to create one if-else block right here. And then after that, we will use, after the if-else statement, then we need to check for paper and scissors down below that. And we'll do that with an else if and then else. So if player input equals rock, and if the computer input equals scissors, we'll console.log the current match, which is, as we know, this variable right here gives us this template literal back dynamically. You win. And the same thing as we did up there. The only difference now is we're starting to increment our player's score by 1. So when we write player score plus plus, that stands for player score equals player score plus 1. And we will write it like this because it's easier. It is used to increment the player score by 1. And the same thing, the computer score here, that stands for the computer score equals computer score plus 1. And it is used to increment the computer score by 1. And you see that happening right here. And the computer's score incremented by 1, and it will do that for all 5 rounds. Actually, I think it stops on the 4th, incrementing it, and then on the 5th, it zeroes out, and you have a winner. The result winner. The computer wins that game. Let's start again. Computer wins a lot. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so then after the if-else statement, we need to check for the paper and the scissors. So else if player input equals paper, and if computer input equals rock, then we console.log out our information. The same with the round win.text content. You win. Increment our player's score by 1. Do our return. Now it's the else. Else console.log, you lose. So if it's us winning, it will be else the computer wins. So that's the if else. I don't think that sounded right, but I hope you get the point. And then at the very last else statement, we'll finish up this round, or this function, this play round function. So if the computer input equals paper, we console.log our information, our round win variable .text content equal the template literal with the embedded expression concatenated to the string you win, then our return, and our last else, and we console.log out the current match to you lose. Round lose.text content equals You lose, concatenated to the embedded expression of current match inside of our template literal. And then it would increment 1 to the computer's score. All right. With the function completed, you just need to call it inside of the add event listener method, like I said in the very beginning. And this is actually the core of the game. And remember, you can find the full code on GitHub. So I'll go up here and show you what I'm talking about. So you call the play round function right here, call this whole function inside of our for each method that has this add event listener inside it. And then that is where we call play round. All right, I hope that made sense. I know it wasn't perfect, but I hope you guys will take away at least something from this video. All right, guys, stay warm and have a great night.